In this video, I am going to explain to you what is running config, what is startup config, where these running config and startup config are stored, and what is the difference between these running config and startup config, how you can save the running config into startup config, and also I'm going to explain to you what is the impact of deleting the startup config. Sometime you may want to delete the startup config and reload the switch and put a different startup config, and you can get the switch to a different configuration status. So I'm going to explain all of that in this video. So let's get a switch from this packet tracer. I'm going to pick a 3560 fixed power switch. Go to the CLI. The switch is now booting. I'm going to say no to the initial config dialog. Enable. So this is a brand new switch. I'm going to see what is the running config. To do that, show RUNN run and hit the tab. It will auto complete as running config and hit enter. You will see the running config. This is what comes with this brand new switch. Hit Q to exit, and I'm going to look at what is the startup config now. To do that, show START and hit the tab. That will complete as startup config. And now it says startup config is not present. So when you boot a switch, you are into the running config. There are no startup config. And I'm going to save the running config into the startup config. To do that, I'm going to type in write, WRITE, and put a question mark. You have the options here to write your running config to the NV memory. You type in MEMORY, hit enter. Now it is building the config and saving the config into the startup config. So now you look at show start and hit tab, and now you can see the startup config. You see now running config and startup config are same. So every time when you make the change, make sure your running config is saved as the startup config, because running config is saved in the RAM, that is a volatile memory, but startup config is saved in the NVRAM, which is non-volatile. So in case there's a power failure and the switch happen to reboot, it will come to the configuration that you had last time. If you forget to save anything, that will be lost. I'm going to make some running config changes. I'm going to go to conf t. I'm going to show you some interesting things in the Cisco configuration. Conf t, and I'm going to change the name of the switch to host name network tutor -1 access. So this is a new name for this switch. You can see now the name changed from switch to network tutor -1 access. And I'm going to create a management VLAN, VLAN 99, name MGMT. So this is to manage the switch. I'm also going to configure the SVI for the management. So go into conf t int VLAN 99 IP address 192.168 1.1 255.255.255.0 as a mask. I'm going to say no shut. All right, so now this interface is up. So I have done all these configuration changes. Let's go to the show start and see whether we see any of these configuration without saving it. And you see there is nothing here. And I'm going to write mem. Now I'm going to see the startup config. And now you can see the VLAN interface have been configured. But if you see that, you are not seeing any VLAN information that I create, VLAN 99, because this switch is in VTP server mode, you need to change that into transmitter mode to see the VLAN. So show VTP status, it's a server, conf t VTP mode transparent and show run, and now you see VLAN 99 is here. Write mem show startup config. Now you can see VLAN 99 and you also can see VLAN 99 interface configuration. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what is the impact of deleting the startup config and why you need to delete startup config in some cases. To delete the startup config, what you have to do is type in WRI, right? You see erase NV memory. You know startup config is stored in the NV RAM. So I'm going to say write erase. It is saying erasing the NV RAM file system will remove all the configuration files. Continue. I am confirming it. Now erase of NV RAM complete. Now look at the startup config. Show startup config. Startup config is not present. If you reload the switch without a startup config, it will boot to a manufacturer settings. That means all the configuration will be erased, including the host name and everything. So I'm going to reload, proceed with reload, reloading. You see now it come to a manufacturer default setting. No, and you see now the host name changed to switch, which is the default name for a switch. Enable, show run. You are still seeing VLAN 99. I will tell you why. And you see VLAN 99 interface is gone. So only VLAN information is there. So you cannot erase the VLAN information by doing a write erase because VLAN information is stored in a different place, that is a non-volatile place, than a startup config. So I'm going to show you where the VLAN information is. Type in dir. This is the file VLAN is stored. So I'm going to say delete VLAN.dat, confirm dir. You see now that is gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload the switch now. No, enable, show run, and now you see VLAN 99 is gone from this running config. So if you want to bring in a configuration from outside to the startup config, what you can do is copy TFTP start. It is going to ask what is the remote host. You give the remote host IP address, say 192, 168, 2.1, source file name. What is the file name of your configuration? abc.conf. Destination file, that is going to be startup config. And then it is accessing the file. It's not going to access that file because we don't have anything called 192.168.2.1. It's going to fail. You see, it is erroring out. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring in a config from a TFTP server to the startup config. And if I do a reload, the switch always reload from the startup config. So that configuration will be loaded into the switch. So these are the things you need to understand when you work with the running config, startup config, VLAN.dat and such in a Cisco environment. If this video is very helpful for you, give me a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification for future networking videos.